Hello everyone and welcome to the session 2 of ArthaPoint CUET MA English. In this session, we will be discussing more sample questions from the CUET 2021 examination. These questions are the past year questions and are usually seen in the CUET examination. Let us begin. The very first question is, who among the following is a metaphysical poet? So, during your bachelor's in English, you must have heard about this very critical term, that is metaphysical poetry. For those who have studied the 17th century British poetry, would know more about metaphysical poets, but let us go through the options and see what is the correct answer. So the options given are John Dryden, W.H. Auden, Andrew Marvell, and Thomas Drake. So the correct answer to this question is Andrew Marvell. Let us get more into who Andrew Marvell was and what is metaphysical poetry, or what is the concept of metaphysical poetry, right? Andrew Marvell was a 17th century British poet, right? He also was a part of the House of Commons that was very famous during the period of 1659 to 78. When we talk of some of his famous work, it is To His Coy Mistress, To His Coy Mistress, The Garden, and An Horatian Ode. So among many of his works, these three are a few poems that are very famous, right? We would be getting more into the life of Andrew Marvell, into his works. We will be summarizing his works, how all his poems followed this concept of metaphysical poetry when we talk of the 17th century British literature in the coming section, right? Now, we have a question here about who amongst the following is a metaphysical poet. You must know the concept of metaphysical. What is metaphysical poem? So the very first thing that you need to remember is that this term metaphysical poem or metaphysical was coined by Samuel Johnson. You should know these names because these could be asked as individual questions in the CUET paper as to who coined the term metaphysical, or what is metaphysical poetry, when was it coined, right? In which book was this term first given, right? So Samuel Johnson gave this term in his book, Life of the Most Eminent English Poet from 1179 to 1781. So it was here that this term metaphysical poetry was first coined. Let us begin by understanding what is this term all about. So meta, when we look at the root word, means after, and physical is something that you all know. So metaphysical meant something that is after the physical, that is beyond what can be seen, beyond what is there. So it involved questions that were about religion, that were both of religious and the conscious, right? Let us further get more into it. So the metaphysical, I have a few questions here. So these were a few questions that were recurrently asked when we talk of metaphysical poetry, such as, does God really exist? Is there a difference between the things appear to us the way they really are? Is everything that happens already predetermined? So all the questions were not about the physical being, but what is there after? So we usually talk of afterlife, right? So what is there after the physical, right? So this was an important theme of the metaphysical poetry. So for example, this question as well, is consciousness limited to the brain? Right. What was the main aim of metaphysical poem? The main aim of metaphysical poetry was to shock the reader and to make them think. Right. So when we talk of Andrew Marvell's most eminent work, one of his works is a dialogue between the soul and the body. The very theme of this poetry is of metaphysical kind, because even the title says that it is a dialogue between the body and the soul, and the poem continuously questions if the soul and the body are one or are they separate entities. So when you go through the work, you would see that the is soul feels like a prisoner in the body, and the body feels as if soul is the tyrant. And there's this huge dialogue between the two. I think the basic of what metaphysical poetry is would be a little clear to you. We would be getting more into it again when we discuss Andrew Marvell and when we discuss the 17th century poets. Also, there are few other metaphysical poets. For example, you have John Donne, you have George Herbert, you have Richard Crashaw, and obviously you have Andrew Marvell. Right? Let us get ahead to the next question. So yes, we know the answer is Andrew Marvell. In which year was Macleod's Minute released? So Macleod's Minute is again a very prominent work. It was released in the year 1835. What does Macleod's Minute talk about? So Macleod is Thomas, sorry, it's Thomas Babington Macleod. Who was Thomas Babington Macleod? So Thomas Babington Macleod was an English philosopher who, in his minutes, which was published on 2nd Feb 1835, said, and he basically brought to light the importance of English education to Indian natives. Right. So he was the one who said it was important for the English natives to learn English language and the science of that of the Europeans. He believes that the Indian education was far beneath the European education system, and that is why he wanted for others also to understand, for the government to understand the importance why Indians should be taught English, why Indians should be taught the ways of the English, right? So he quoted that the Indians would be, so the natives would be Indian by blood, by color, but they would be Europeans. They would be English in terms of their habits, their beliefs. Why was this important? Because Obviously, they wanted a few people to support their beliefs. They wanted that if they impart Indian education to English, sorry, if they impart English education to Indian natives, they would develop a group of people who share their beliefs, who support them, and who would make it easy for them to rule over India. Right? So that is what this minute is all about. Let us move on to the next question. The next question is, which bi-monthly journal is published by Sahitya Academy? The correct answer to this question is the Indian literature. Now, the Indian literature is the oldest journal that was published by the Sahitya Academy. It was first published in the year 1957, and since then this has become a bi-monthly journal. Right. Now, what does this journal consist of? This journal consists of translated poems, poetry, drama, or any prominent work from writers that are published in the 23 Indian languages. Right. So Sahitya Academy in total publishes 3 journals. One is the Indian literature, one is in Hindi language, that is also published bi-monthly, and the third is a Sanskrit language journal, which is published quarterly. So, which is the English journal? It is Indian literature. Let us move on to the next question. Who is the current Poet Laureate of England? Let us go through the options. Ted Hughes, Simon Armitage, Carol Ann Duffy, and Motion. So the correct answer to this question is Simon Armitage. Simon Armitage is a British professor who is now awarded the Poet Laureate of England title. He was awarded the title in 2019 when he replaced Carol Ann Duffy. So earlier, from 9 to 19, Carol Duffy was the Poet Laureate, and now it's Simon Armitage. Poet Laureates are appointed for a year of 10 years. Easy question. Let us move on to the next question. Also, there's one more thing to know about the Poet Laureate of England. So, who was the first Poet Laureate of England? It's John Dryden. So this could also be asked as a separate question in the CUET paper as to who was the first English Poet Laureate of England. It would be John Dryden. Let us move now to the next question. The next question is, Train to Pakistan, a novel by Khushwant Singh, was first published in. The options that we have here are 1948, 1956, 1950, and 1955. This book is also a part of the English UG syllabus. So for those who have read it, they must know when was this book published. Anyways, the correct answer to this question is 1956. Train to Pakistan, a very, very important work by Khushwant Singh. This book is set during the partition of 1947, and it talks about how the commons were affected during the partition. Right. So this book talks of the issues. It talks of how the religious sentiments were hurt during the period of partition, something that is the bloodiest day, the bloodiest period in history of both nations, India and Pakistan. Right. So we would get more into it when we discuss the works of Khushwant Singh. Anyways, one more thing important to know about Train to Pakistan is that this book is set in a village of Mano Majra. This village, initially it was seen as a place where there were no religious boundaries. Hindu, Sikh, Isais, and everybody they used to live together, and how this partition affected the people and it brought chaos to the village, right? So let us move ahead. Let us quickly move on to the next question. Eric Arthur Blair used the pseudonym. So basically, you have been asked what was the pseudonym of Eric Arthur Blair. I think the options third and fourth are missing because the correct answer to this question is George Orwell. Right. Now, there's a very interesting fact as to why he used his pseudonym. The very first reason, there were basically two reasons to do this. The first reason was that he felt that if he failed as a writer or if he failed as an English philosopher, his parents would be extremely ashamed. So there was this fear wherein he felt that he did not want to shame his parents and therefore he used the pseudonym. The second reason is quite interesting. The fact that he hated his name Eric. He always thought that the word Eric and his name Eric, it reminded him of Victorian boys prig, right? And that is why he used the pseudonym George Orwell. Let us now move to the next question. Let us quickly move on to the next question. The Marathi film CUET was directed by. So the movie CUET came out in the year 2014, and this was directed by a debutant director, Chaitanya Tamhani. Now, this movie talks of the Indian legal system, and it is set in the Maharashtrian court, and it completely investigates how the Indian legal system works. One more thing to note about the movie CUET is that this movie has won about 18 awards. When we talk of the plot of this movie, so this movie talks about a Maharashtrian folk singer whose song leads to a manhole cleaner's suicide and how this folklore singer is accused of somebody's death. I would ask you all to go watch this movie. It is an extremely interesting watch. Let us move on to the next question. Who is the father of Indian cinema? A very, very easy question. And I think even those who haven't read English literature would know this. The correct answer to the question is D.G. Phalke. So Dada Saheb Phalke is known as the father of Indian cinema because he was the first to give a full-length feature film. What was the name of this film? This film was known as Raja Harishchandra. And when was this film when did this film come out? This film came out in the year 1913. Dada Saheb Phalke has directed over 97 films and 20 plus short stories in his career of 19 years. And even today, the highest award in the cinema is the Dada Saheb Phalke Award. This award was recently given to Rajnikant sir. It has also been given to Mr. Amitabh Bachchan. And therefore, this becomes a very eminent question for you to know. With this, we end today's session. For solved answer key, you can contact at 83686-63950. Thank you so much for watching. For more such videos, you can subscribe to the channel, and I'll be back tomorrow with more sample questions from the past year. Thank you.